And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
John, this morning in downtown Los Angeles, Bay Area Assemblyman Matt Haney held a press conference where he said he's got a new bill that's going to save all the downtowns, L.A., San Francisco, Oakland, and that's by extending last call to 4 a.m. He brought on the head of the L.A. Chamber of Commerce, Marina Salinas, to speak about how great of an idea this is. But, Johnny, what happens every single time anybody ever does a press conference outside in downtown L.A.?
Out come the sirens.
This is such an important bill. We all know the difficulties that our downtowns are having. And as a regional chamber, we look at across Los Angeles, and we know those small businesses need to grow and thrive. And what better way to do that in collaboration with our downtowns and the needs of the downtown than to bring that nightlife economy? I love the way that you said we need those bold ideas.
That sounded like multiple sirens all at the same time.
What's going on?
Downtown L.A. So, yes, more booze is the solution to that.
You know, we surveyed all the problems facing the state of California, and we thought collectively, you know what we're missing? More people driving at a .2. (800-222-5222) is a telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is a writer for the Washington Examiner. You can follow him on X at John Lewinski. John Lewinski, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Now,
Good to be here.
You wrote a piece on the cult of California, which I want to get to in a minute. But before we get to that, I want to play some sound for you because you also wrote a piece about profanity in politics, how profanity is now becoming something that's in, particularly for Democratic politicians who are trying to prove to their constituents that they are fighting Donald Trump as much as they can. I want to play for you some sound of former L.A. City Councilman Kevin De Leon on a podcast.
So what I like to do is my values and my principles, I like to manifest them in the outcomes that improve the human condition for all individuals. In short, what that means, get done. That's translation, just get done. Just don't talk about the issue.
So when you studied this topic and you wrote about it also for the Washington Examiner, what did you find about this recent trend of vulgarity in politics?
The first thing that comes out is this juvenile model you see right away where, well, he started it and, we're just responding to that. But what it seems to be is I think at some point it's all strategic and planned on both sides. I think Trump and Trump's people got the sense that if, this is spontaneous and this is just him being him, and people who are bored with Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush back in the day will be more turned on by this more passionate and, in this case, what would be considered obscene language 5-10 years ago. So Trump is doing it off the cuff. I don't think it's planned there, but there's at some point it was decided, yeah, go ahead and swear. It looks good. And then some consultant or some firm on the DNC side said, well, we have to do the same thing now. It's going to become a sort of a war of attrition now where we have to show we're just as passionate in our resistance as he is in his policies. So everybody, whether they get the official memo or not, it gets out into the zeitgeist that now we're going to throw F-bombs around at every chance to show we really care about our policies and our voters. I don't know what difference it makes, but that's what we're going to start. I don't think now that it's out of the bottle, I don't think it's going back in.
What's strange to me, and maybe you feel differently, is that for people who, I guess it's consistent with their character. With Trump, it's consistent with his character. Maxine Waters swears all the time. It's consistent with her character. You don't really raise an eyebrow when you see people like that swear because that's just what they do, and they've done it since the beginning of time. There are other people who you can look at, you can tell, okay, this person speaks with the Queen's English. Tina Smith, the senator from Minnesota, she bills herself as being Minnesota nice, and now she swears right and left, and she swears in ways that you can tell she's not a regular cursor, because she puts the curse word in the wrong place. And you say to yourself, okay, you look completely disingenuous, and I don't know who you're trying to kid, but they're just all doing it.
You do see that, and you also see some of the people who deep down this is how they will always speak. And now that the censorship cap is off, it's going to, they're going to start letting it fly. At some point, there has to be a result back from these consultants where this is selling or it's not selling. I think what we'll see in the short term is the big protests from the last week or so will tell at least the DNC side, keep going. This has got them all riled up, and we'll keep doing it. And then if that's the case, the Trump side will keep doing it. I don't see anyone, unless I missed it, I don't see any politician on the national or even regional scales has come out and said, we need to stop this. We need to start behaving like professionals who are serving the public and not just people on a street corner throwing around language like this.
We're speaking with John Lewinski, who you can follow on X at John Lewinski. John, you have a piece out called The Cult of California. We know that politics can be very tribal, where you hang out with your group and you oppose the other group and vice versa. But you think it's really more like a cult than anything else. Can you explain what you found in that piece?
I first started to see it in 2008 when Obama was, for example, won that election and is inaugurated and stuff. You saw people in the crowd who are openly weeping and their arms are up in the air like they're at a, charismatic fundamentalist church service somewhere. And then you see it more recently in 2020 after the assassination attempt where people start to treat Trump like he's a deity. I paired that up with the fact that we're seeing a decline in participation, services, et cetera, on some denominations in the U.S. Different religions not seeing the same level of participation they did. That need for belonging and for being part of a group or having an identity that's tied to something larger than an individual doesn't go away. It stays in the human psyche, as does the need to be better than other people. In other words, there's some narcissism there where our group, now I'm in a group that's better than your group, so I'm better than you. That energy doesn't go away. I think it just changed over to religion. And the danger there is once politics is no longer transactional, where I give my vote to this person, so this person will run my policies. And if they don't run my policies, I'll give my vote to someone else in this party or another party. Once that model's gone, and it just becomes a question of, like you say, health membership in a group, the performance level, the performance model or demand disappears, and you get Los Angeles.
Well, also with religion, issues are issues frequently involving morality. How you come down on abortion is a moral issue for people. How you come down on assisted suicide is a moral issue for people. But not every subject in politics is one that involves morality. If you think the tax rate should be 39%, the top tax rate, and the other group thinks it should be 33%, well, that's an argument over numbers. That's an argument over public policy. That's an argument over how much money the government needs to operate or what percentage of people deserve to keep and spend on their own. But it's not necessarily an issue regarding morality. But if you look at politics as a very religious sort of institution and every issue is an issue of morality, it makes compromise on a subject, even like a tax rate, which is really not moral in nature. It makes compromise on a subject like that virtually impossible, like everything else.
And you also, because once you're in, there's no compromise within a religion. If you are in a given faith and the heads of that faith, whether it's a priest or a prophet or whatever you want to call it, once that doctrine, that holy writ has been laid down, you don't get to negotiate with it. You're either on board or you're not. And when I see people look at, say, Los Angeles in this case, say political analysts or writers from different parts of the country who are tuned in, they'll often say, I don't understand it. I don't understand LA. The crime is out of control. They have more homeless than any other city in the country. They're $1 billion in debt. and they can stay Democrat. They don't need to vote Republican, but they won't even moderate on the Democrat side. And I always tell them, if you look at it in terms of religion and not politics, don't look at it as a political situation. Look at it as a religious one. It makes sense. You can't deviate from the Holy Writ, and you have to support the prophets that are in charge of your, in this case, your cult. And that's how the problems just, it keeps your show well informed. It keeps your show fueled. And that's why the problems simply don't get fixed. You can't change the people who are causing them.
Well, and it just drives people like me crazy because I am a registered Republican, and I regard myself as being right of center, conservative, however you want to call it. But if I lived in a red state, if I lived in Utah, or I lived in some other state, Idaho, that reliably votes Republican, but the homeless situation was out of control, the city was dirty, there's no water in the fire hydrants, I can't buy insurance because of crime and homelessness and everything else, they won't do anything about the fires, I would expect heads to roll because I have to live there, and if the level of government services don't match up with what I'm paying in taxes, then we got a problem. What's so weird about living here is that everyone acknowledges that crime's out of control. Everyone acknowledges that the city is dirty, there's trash everywhere, nothing gets cleaned up, that there should be water in the fire hydrants, and there isn't. And when we establish all of this to be fact, they don't seem to be angry. They don't seem to be angry with their side. They don't seem to be angry with their elected leaders. They just kind of throw up their hands and they go, well, they're not Trump. And that's good enough for them. Or they sufficiently hate Donald Trump and they sufficiently hate the Republican Party. So those in and of themselves are credentials that are sufficient for them to remain in office. And
you're also not allowed to question either the, like I say, the Holy Writ or the theological leaders. You have to, if you're going to be a member of a church, you have to be in line to support the leaders of the church. Would probably be described at one time like an old school Kennedy Democrat, so I've been left way behind. But if there's if there's one perfect example of this problem, it would be that when you see the high crime and for example, half the city burned down, you see the high crime and everything else, the people who are dedicated and will not shift off of this cult behavior, it becomes zealotry to the point of martyrdom. They're risking their city, they're risking their homes, they're risking their families, their friends, their children, and they simply will not divert to another potential way of sending out their votes and changing their philosophies. They will stick to it until literal destruction hits the city. And again, that's martyring yourself and to a faith. And if there's any better, and that is the single biggest example I can come up with where this ceases to become a political relationship and becomes a religious one.
Does this mean the end of local government is certainly on the horizon? And I say that because if you're talking about water board, if you're talking about school board, city council, county supervisor, local races, the number one issue or the number one thing that you need from an elected is competence. You need to make sure that the people on the water board make sure there's water in the fire hydrants and the faucets, etc. If you are voting for someone for a school board, you need to make sure that they don't bankrupt the school district, that there's learning that's going on, that the contracts are commensurate with what amount of money you have to spend, those sorts of things. And there's really not an ideological slant to a lot of that. I guess you could invent one if you wanted to. But for the most part, it's just, do you know what you're doing? Are you good at your job? Can you figure out how to make this institution work? If suddenly competence is not regarded as being relevant when you're evaluating these candidates, but making sure that the candidate hates Donald Trump enough or is a committed Democrat or hates Republicans, whatever, in a state like California, that means you're going to end up with a lot of people who have the right ideology but don't have competence. And that means the local government isn't going to function.
It's a special problem in California, in Los Angeles, San Francisco, et cetera, while there are other cities that certainly can lean left, the absolute single-mindedness of these cities is unusual. Other major cities in the country will have a more, at least some sort of variety in their local governments. But I wrote an op-ed about this a while ago, in which I said the danger we're running into now, and it's one of the reasons LA burned, is that if you're going to be in one of these pseudo-religious political philosophies, you need to make sort of sexy, splashy policies and showy policies that get you on TV, but also show your piety, for want of a better word, and making sure the garbage gets picked up and the streets are paved and the hydrants work none of that is fun. None of that is exciting or sexy or generates passion from the voting base, even though it's essential to government. And that's what you're seeing in, different cities across the country where, in LA's case especially, where none of these things, there were long-standing problems and people could see it coming. I lived in LA for more than 10 years. I bailed out because I felt something was coming, because nobody was paying attention to the boring parts of government, to the infrastructure and the basic societal functions that a city needs to do, because it was more, like you say, it was more important for officials to focus on national issues or to demonstrate how, this morality is better than their morality. While, meanwhile, you had reservoirs unfilled and power lines that weren't turned off, and nobody wanted to be the grown-up in the room.
John Lewinski. You can get him online at johnlewinski.com. You can read him in the pages of the Washington Examiner and follow him on X at John Lewinski. John, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me. Talk to you again.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to the John Phillips Show on Apple Podcasts, the John Phillips Show on iHeart, John Phillips Show on Spotify. Search for the John Phillips Show anywhere you get a podcast. Hit subscribe, download all the episodes, or go to one of our radio station websites, KABC.com or KSFO.com. You can listen to these podcasts wherever you are, whether it's in the car, whether it's walking around. Just be real careful if you're listening to the podcast at full volume on the Hagenberger.
We got Hagenberger problems, man.
And coming up later on in the week, we're going on the road.
We're going back to Long Beach, everyone. We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Gladstone's Long Beach and the 50th anniversary of the Long Beach Grand Prix. Join us this Friday from noon to 3 for Fan Free Friday. We'll be broadcasting live from the beautiful patio right on the Rainbow Harbor in Long Beach. It's gorgeous out there. The view is amazing, and the food is addictive. Gladstone's Long Beach, a great location for date night. Delicious to get together with friends, a sunset cocktail, family meals, and celebrations. Located directly across from the Pike Shopping Center. That's where the parking's going to be. Join us this Friday.
One big insurance company in the state of California is looking for approval to raise your premiums. And as it so happens, Randy, it's the company I do business with.
State Farm asked Ricardo Lara for an emergency rate hike of 22%. Ricardo Lara said, yes, but we also have to have a hearing so you can show us your work.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Wait a minute. Didn't he put the cart before the horse there?
Yes. He didn't say what you think he would say, which is, we need to have a hearing first, and you prove to me why you need this rate hike. What he said is, I'm going to tentatively approve this rate hike, but we will also have a hearing about it.
So we're just going through the motions.
That's all this is, because Ricardo Lara is bought and paid for by the insurance industry. Pick a hotel, pick a convention. Who sent him there?
Great.
For more on the hearing that's supposed to happen tomorrow, here is KCR3 in Sacramento and the best in the business, Ashley Zavala.
Eyes will be on the California Insurance Department for a hearing that's happening tomorrow on the State Farm's emergency request for a rate hike.
KCRA3 Capital correspondent Ashley Zavala joining us now with what we can expect.
Yeah, the insurance commissioner announced that hearing just last month, and State Farm is looking to raise homeowners insurance rates by 22% for about 1 million customers.
Remember how they had so much bad PR after the fires, they decided it wasn't a great idea to spend a whole bunch of money on the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they actually shot that commercial. They just didn't by the ad time. So eventually they released it with like a bunch of celebrities pretending to be Batman saving the day. And now they need this rate increase, do they?
Isn't that what Gavin Newsom nicknamed himself?
Yes. Well, Gavin Newsom likes it, but it was Marshawn telling it to him on the original podcast Gavin did. And apparently it all the way goes back to a Dave Chappelle stand-up special.
I see.
By 22% for about 1 million customers. As we reported last month, California Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara said he would approve that if the company can prove that it's really necessary in this upcoming hearing. So,
yeah, but he said he already approved it.
Yes.
He said, I tentatively approve it. We're also going to have a hearing.
This is kabuki, as they say.
That hearing happening tomorrow morning at the California Department of Insurance's Oakland office on Harrison Street.
Uh-oh.
So they put it in Oakland so no one would show up.
I'm wondering now, the Department of Insurance has an Oakland office. What do you think they have to pay for insurance?
I'd like to know.
It starts at 10 a.m. and the Department of Insurance will stream it on its YouTube page.
Oh, boy. Now I get to watch that tomorrow.
So what, all 30 people will watch?
Am I subscribed already to the California Department of Insurance? I bet you I am. California Department of Insurance. You know how many California departments I am subscribed to? Yeah, I'm already subscribed. I'll find out if anything happens.
The only thing I'm subscribed to on YouTube is Vegas Mad.
State Farm has said this is needed following the Los Angeles wildfires that destroyed more than 16,000 buildings, most of them homes. The company says
except for the ones, they kicked off months earlier and now they're on the FAIR Plan. And Ricardo Lara made a new rule where the FAIR Plan can pass on the cost to consumers.
Oh, they've been kicking people off their policies before it was popular.
The company says it's trying to avoid a dire financial situation that executives say could push even more homeowners into the state's last resort insurance option, which is known as the FAIR Plan. Meanwhile, Lada explained to
which they want. They want you to go on the FAIR Plan because they can write you a much worse policy. It's not a government plan. The FAIR Plan is a consortium of all these insurance companies being able to offer the worst coverage possible because there's no such thing as bad press when you're the insurer of last resort.
And the people who were on the FAIR Plan, whose homes burned down or were heavily damaged during the fires, they're all getting the runaround from them.
Meanwhile, Lada explained to lawmakers in a hearing last month why this is important.
Climate change. After my own negotiations, I felt that they're still playing around, so we're going to have a hearing with them.
But you already told them yes.
Yeah, you can posture all you want. If the answer is yes, you can raise the rates, then you're giving them everything they asked for.
With the administrative law judge who's going to dig in deep and ask these questions and then provide me the final recommendation. What I don't want is two things. I don't want to create precedent.
You already did that.
When you said yes immediately, you created precedent.
Where other insurance companies could come in without giving me data, saying they need an emergency rate, and to take advantage of another catastrophe, which they're bound to happen. And two, that that we actually force this juggernaut of a company to give us information so that we know firsthand. If you're in trouble, I'd rather need to know that now than wait for another catastrophe and then you try to come up with more rate without fully understanding what you're doing to put your financial house in order.
He doesn't fully understand what his job is.
No, he doesn't.
Now, Lada there actually went on to tell lawmakers that's more than he should have probably legally said, but the insurance commissioner is making it clear he wants not just the information, but also for the public to see this conversation that's about to happen with State Farm.
So, Ashley, how much could that rate increase actually impact homeowners?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's to be seen, but that increase could translate to an extra $600 a year on average for homeowners, according to Consumer Watchdog.
That's how much it went up last year.
Okay, there are no limits as to how often they can ask for these rate increases. So if they get this, he's not saying, okay, you're agreeing to not come back for another 4 years or 5 years. They can come back later this year. They can come back next year. They can come back the year after that.
And with State Farm specifically, they asked and got approved for a 30% rate increase 2 years ago. Immediately filed for another 30% rate increase.
And here's something to think about. He's termed out of office. This is where he could be potentially very dangerous. He's termed out of office. He's up in 2026. It's assumed that he's going to run for something else. Maybe lieutenant governor, maybe board of supervisors in L.A. County. Who knows? He hasn't officially filed for anything yet. If he loses that race because he's attracted so much negative attention in the primary, then he is going to have, let's see, if the primary is in June, the rest of June, July, August, September, October, November, December, part of January. He will have 8 months to approve whatever rate increases the insurance industry asks of him, to do them as many favors as possible that cost him nothing before he leaves office, and then they can hire him to be an executive, they can hire him to be a lobbyist, they can cut some kind of deal with him where he gets retirement money.
We got to figure out a way to distract him for those last 4 months, and I've come up with a plan. We got to send him a letter saying, you, Ricardo Lara, have won a contest, and you, for the next 6 months, will get to tour the world at every single Pride Festival with DJ Kitty Glitter. He won't have time to make any crooked deals.
No, he'll be on the road.
Consumer Watchdog typically gets involved in these rate insurance cases. They're known as an intervener. That group has said it will legally challenge the approval if LADA goes through with it. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Okay.
You'll be following it for us.
Yeah.
Ashley, thank you.
So I have to watch that tomorrow morning.
I'll tell you, it may be worth it just to allow him to become lieutenant governor or county supervisor so he politically can't do that. Because if he loses and he's bitter and he realizes that his political career is over, then those last 8 months are going to be unbelievably dangerous.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
Let's go to Dan in Sonoma. Dan, hello.
Hi. I lost my house. I was thinking about the people down there, but I lost my house in 2017. And my advice would be to get what's called a public adjuster. I don't know if it would help with the FAIR plan, but with anybody that has a regular insurance policy, they charge me 10% of what they got. But there's no way that we could have navigated through, my wife and I, there's no way we could have gone through this and without them. So, and then also, the first call that I made was to the county to see if they were going to mess with the property taxes and reassess the property, and they didn't. They said they wouldn't, and they didn't. I didn't get anything in writing, but they did not. They went back to our old tax base, and it's hopefully that they can. Hopefully down there they can do the same thing they did up here in Sonoma. They had my plans in Sonoma. They had them for 3 days, and they okayed them. I really don't have any complaints about the county as the way they handled it. They had 6,000 structures that Sonoma County had to deal with. So I don't know. I don't know if it helps anybody.
So let me get this straight. You rebuilt and moved back in. How long did that whole process take?
Well, the house burned in October. The property was cleared. We had somebody private do it. On our property, we had a private contractor do it because what was happening with FEMA, they were coming in and digging 4 to 5 feet of dirt off of the footprint of the house because they were getting paid by the ton when they took it to the dumps. We found out they were getting paid by how much they were bringing in. Now then those people had to bring dirt in and compact it and everything to build on it. So I had somebody do it privately. And from the time that, like I said, it burned in October, we got our permit. They had it cleared in December, and we had the house drawn up plans and submitted them in about the middle of June. And we started construction July 3rd, and we were done in February, the next February. It took 7 months and 11 days, but it's an exceptional. I had a friend that helped me, and I actually built it. I actually helped him build it, but mine was an exceptional. Every house on our street burned down. I'd say average is probably 3 years. 3 to 4 years.
Well, I'm
Get it
happy
back.
that yours didn't take that long, and it seems like for 3 years, that's going to be faster than what the people in Pacific Palisades are going to get, because the mayor's now saying 5.
Yeah, I mean, even the inspector, he knew I was the owner builder. He gave me a cell phone number and said, "Call me anytime you got a question." I had really, nothing but good things to say about the county, which is surprising, but I got to say the way it was.
All right. Well, thank you for the call, and I'm happy you're back in your house. All right. So the top story nationally right now are the tariffs. In fact, earlier today, I appeared on Donald Trump Jr.'s program, Triggered, where we talked about that, and that's going to air on Thursday of this week, where President Trump, who is a lame duck president, he's never going to be able to run for president again, and doesn't have to worry about the poll numbers or the daily fluctuations of the stock market because voters can't kick him out of office. So he's trying to take on big issues like immigration, like entitlement reform, the size of government, and the trade imbalance. So tariffs are the topic of the day because he wants to make sure that other countries aren't taking advantage of the United States. And he says, like when you take medicine, there may be short-term pain, but it's what needs to happen for long-term health. Well, of course, because Gavin Newsom sees himself as president and not as governor, he's trying to inject himself into this conversation.
Gavin Newsom posts a video nonsensically saying, hey, all you countries that are mad at the U.S. right now, exempt California from those tariffs, please.
Oh, sure. I'm sure they'll get right on that, Gavin.
For more on if that is even something a governor can do, here is CBS Sacramento.
Analysts fear we could be headed towards a recession.
But as Governor Newsom makes his case to spare California from those retaliatory tariffs, we're getting answers on if that's something he even has the authority to do.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't.
But he's going to do it anyway because it gets him in the news.
California is a stable trading partner.
Governor Gavin Newsom urging foreign countries to exempt the state from global payback over President Trump's sweeping new round of tariffs.
Donald Trump's tariffs do not represent all Americans, particularly those.
Boy, is he getting gravelly.
He really is.
Donald Trump's tariffs do not represent all Americans, particularly those.
Doesn't it sound like if you spoke that way, your throat would hurt all the time?
Maybe it's because he's doing too many podcasts.
Particularly those that I represent here in the 5th largest economy in the world.
The markets are going to boom. The stock is going to boom. The country is going to boom.
President Trump announced 10% tariffs on all imports to the U.S. starting tomorrow as a way to balance what he says is a trade deficit. And those are on top of reciprocal tariffs slated for next week. But the move could hit California particularly hard. Nearly 16% of the state's GDP last year, $675 billion, came from trade.
And that's why today I've directed my administration to look at new opportunities to expand trade.
The White House.
That's not your job.
No, unless you see yourself as a president and you want to say, hey, look, I have experience with international trade.
The White House striking back, saying the governor should focus on out-of-control homelessness, crime, and unaffordability.
Ooh, he's not going to like hearing that.
Instead of trying his hand at international deal-making.
Article 1, Section 10 of our Constitution says the governor can't even enter in these kinds of treaties. So what he's doing is just grandstanding.
Republican State Senator Tony Strickland on Trump's tariffs.
It's just like everything else with Gavin. Here's a big flashy headline, and it means nothing.
No follow-through, ever.
I'm against tariffs, but what the president's trying to do is say countries like China shouldn't import our American-made goods over there and cost us jobs here in the United States.
I guess we have to figure out if this is a negotiation tool or a long-term plan before we know the impact of what the governor is saying.
CBS News correspondent Scott McFarland says while it's not clear whether Governor Newsom can carve out exemptions,
he cannot.
No, we know this.
His message.
Also, it would look really, really, really bad for Gavin if the president of China says we're exempting California from all this.
Well, imagine if the country declares war on some country and then one state, Vermont, goes, well, we're not part of that, so don't count us.
His message is loud and clear in Washington.
So whether his very provocative statement holds up is a different matter, but it shows the governor sees a risk of unpopularity to what the president's doing here, and that some of the president's coalition could crumble beneath a market turmoil.
Even with questions about his approach.
Although one way to coalesce all that is to unite everyone against Gavin Newsom.
Which can easily be done.
Just by him opening his mouth.